Aloha. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Energy with Maui Electric, where we discuss all things energy on Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. I'm Kauiwai Dixon with Maui Electric and today's host. As a public utility, it is our responsibility to provide safe, reliable, and affordable power 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to nearly 70,000 customers across our 3 islands. Our communities are growing. They're growing to meet the needs of our residents and our visitors with the development of new schools, more business spaces, more residential projects, and this growth equates to the need for more power. Hawaii, as you may already know, has one of the most ambitious clean energy goals in the nation, 100% renewable energy by the year 2045. And some folks may be asking, so why did we commit to such an aggressive goal? Well, a couple things. As an island state, we are dependent on imported fossil fuel, not just for our energy needs, but also for transportation, ground, marine, and air. Air transportation is critical to our visitor industry. Moving away from this reliance on fossil fuel means reducing our carbon footprint and helping our state become more self-sustaining. Ultimately, as residents here, I know that one really big concern of all of us here in Hawaii is the cost of anything, including electricity. So much of this drive comes down to cost. We have no control over the cost of imported oil. We do not make a profit on imported oil. What we pay for it is what's passed on to our customers, no more, no less. So this said, we do everything we possibly can to strike that balance between meeting the energy needs of our customers, taking advantage of as much renewable energy as we possibly can, without sacrificing reliable electrical service that you deserve, and doing so as cost effectively as possible. Not at all an easy task. But we're up to the challenge, and there's a lot we're doing as a company to transform and change the way we do business to achieve our clean energy goals. So in today's show, we're delving more into what goes into the planning of our energy future moving forward. We'll also be taking a visit to our new Kuehelani substation in Kahului to show you how projects like these both meet the power needs of our communities and help to make our system a little more flexible, thereby allowing us to be able to add more renewable energy to our electrical grid moving forward. So it's kind of planning for the future, so meeting the needs of today and at the same time planning for the future. So first things first, joining me today in studio are Ellen Nishiwa, who leads up our Customer Solutions and Planning Department. We have Greg Kresge, who is our Renewable Energy Director. And we have Jarrett Contino, new to our staff here. And Jarrett handles renewable energy contracts. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yes. So, Ellen, Customer Solutions and Planning, obviously a lot of planning. Tell us a little bit about your area, and what you do in the planning area.
Sure. Okay. Our area focuses on planning for and implementing solutions that customers can use to manage their energy needs if they choose to, and how that fits in with the overall resources available to manage our grid. We realized that it will take everyone working together with us, residents, businesses, and government, to achieve a 100% renewable energy future. Our planning division projects energy use and plans for resource options that meet those needs within a broader process, a planning effort that includes Hawaiian Electric and Hawaii Electric Light. Our Renewable Energy Projects Division is responsible for managing the programs that are available to customers to interconnect their generating systems to the electrical grid, with customers in defined programs and negotiating agreements with independent power producers. And they also promote electrification of transportation.
Okay, so absolutely, the work that your group is doing is definitely a hefty one. There's a lot on your plate, without a doubt. Considering the decisions being made today and having to plan that out 100% by 2045, 28 years away, right? So, you know, kind of what I touched on just a little bit ago is meeting the needs of today, and as far as meeting the energy needs that our residents and our businesses need today, but still planning out almost 30 years away, right? So that said, what goes into this long-range planning? Because it's not an easy task.
Well, 28 years is a long time. Lots of things can happen. Lots of things can change within that time frame. We've seen tremendous change within the energy industry within even the last 2 to 5 years. So what we're for this reason, you know, the planning process is a continuous process. The plans we have today are not set in stone. We plan for the best with the best information and projections we have, and focus on the near term. So in the next 5 years, really putting us and setting ourselves up on a path to achieve that 100% renewable energy future, but looking at still continuing to provide safe, reliable, renewable energy with consideration of costs, and deciding on a path that doesn't crowd out future breakthroughs. So we're really focusing on the first 5 years to set us on that course.
It's really about just being as flexible as we possibly can, right?
Right.
You know, and from the cost component, certainly things that cost a certain, you know, figure today, that's going to change in the future.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
definitely being real flexible. We've been doing a lot of work on Molokai.
We have, yes.
You know, Molokai, there is a slightly more aggressive goal there to reach 100%. Yes, yes. So 2020 is the goal that we're striving for, and we've done a lot of work with the Molokai community and its people. You know, it really is about the people and what they feel is best for their island. It's their island, it's their home, and it's important for us to be able to work with them. So tell us a little bit about Molokai and accelerating them to 100% by 2023, short years away.
A really aggressive goal,
Super
for sure.
aggressive.
But yes, Molokai with its small island grid and already a large amount of solar energy on the systems are experiencing some challenges with incorporating and integrating more renewable energy. So we're looking at innovative ways to really address these challenges and develop maybe some lessons learned that we can use and leverage, and that would benefit the other islands as we all set down the path of 100% renewable energy. We have earlier this year we started with roundtable discussions with the community that really, you know, we're really asking them. We want to learn about, you know, their preferences, their priorities, and some concerns they have with this really aggressive goal. So we're continuing this dialogue, and you know, we're going to be talking about the different resources that are available, costs and trade-offs, and making the right choice for Molokai.
Yeah, and you know, in order to have a productive, meaningful dialogue, that actually means that folks have to be educated. So, you know, I think, you know, one of the first things we did was try to help folks to be more knowledgeable when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to renewable energy sources, what they mean, you know, how challenging they can be to integrate. And what we as a company, as your electric company, some of the things that have to be done for us to get there. Yeah, so that was a really good process, I thought. Within Maui County, so we are at about 37% renewable energy as of end of 2016? Yeah, end of 2016. So we're well on our way. Lots of work to do ahead of us, though. But Greg, share a little bit about your renewable energy team and what you guys are doing to help us meet that goal.
Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of things going on within the renewable energy area, and I have a great team. We have 3 energy contract manager folks who manage independent power producer companies that want to sell power to us that is renewable. We handle those contracts, negotiations, management of the contract after it's completed. Some examples of those, for example, are the wind farms that we have. We have 3 of them here on Maui. And then we also have some solar installations too. Jarrett will talk a little bit more about those. But you know, we started off with really with PV taking this huge exponential growth, even though we have 36% renewable, over an annualized basis and 24 hours a day, there's times during the day when we're at 75% renewable. We have a lot of wind and we have a lot of sun, and that goes directly into the grid to offset our diesel generation. So that, for example, the NEM program really pushed on, which is net energy metering, really pushed on PV adoption, photovoltaic, energy on your roof adoption for distributed generation, which is on people's rooftops. And now we're finding that the kind of the low-hanging fruit of the easy stuff is done. Now we're getting into the really difficult stuff because the grid is getting tighter and tighter, and especially during the middle of the day when we have a lot of photovoltaic power generation, we're really needing to look at our energy mix and look at how things are being done and what's the most reliable and safe way to balance the generation coming in addition to making sure that the grid stays reliable and we don't overproduce in some areas or have too much energy that we can't use. So we're looking at things like some of those things to help us handle that is my favorite subject, which is electrification of transportation. I love electric vehicles. But one of the things that we can do is, ideally, is take some of that renewable energy that might otherwise not be able to be used, or that it can, we can have more of it, and we can actually put it into the batteries in the vehicles. Be able to do things like managed charging, workplace charging, where a lot of people, they drive to work in their vehicles, the vehicles sit there all day, and then they drive home. Well, is there a way that we can charge those vehicles while they're sitting there idle, and then they can go home with a full charge, and some of that having been, most of it having been renewable energy driven. So, so also part of my team, we still have photovoltaic installations going on. We have a customer self-supply program, which is basically you're generating your power and you're using everything that you're generating at your home. Those are typically paired up with a battery system. And then we also have a customer grid supply program, which does pay back kind of more on a wholesale basis for any excess energy that you do produce. And then sometimes those are also teamed up with batteries. So we're looking at batteries as playing a much more of an important role in our energy mix and our renewable energy mix. So we have some people that handle that program as well. We have some inspectors that go and make sure that the systems are reliably and they're installed correctly so that they're safe and they perform as they're supposed to perform. So we have this whole mix and group of people. We have some people that are leading some really interesting efforts on Molokai that are new. These are brand new things, brand new technologies. They're there to help us with that energy sort of situation where we have a lot of energy, in some cases excess energy, that we have to be able to take care of and manage.
Yeah, and truly trailblazing in many ways. Yes, because we said this earlier. We are a island state. Isolated grids. We are not connected between islands. So adding on these higher amounts of as available energy, which means power that is there 24/7, as opposed to power that is there when the wind's blowing or not. That's where things like battery and storage comes in and plays a really key role. So when it comes to, Greg, though, when it comes to renewable energy projects, that's kind of changed over the years. Tell us about that transition, and tell us a little bit about how that's even changed the way we work with our partners now.
Yeah, so we're familiar with the wind and with photovoltaic, but a lot of things have changed really recently, which is solar panel prices have gone way down, battery prices have gone down. We've seen installations throughout the state. We've seen them in other locations where the prices are getting cheaper, and there's different functions. Batteries are not just there to maybe inject power anymore. They can help with frequency, and they can help with other things that help with the reliability of the grid. We're learning some of these things as we go along. This is some really new stuff. It's been, while batteries have been out there, the chemistry has really changed and the technology has changed to the point where we're seeing all these different functions on a very computerized, automatic basis. They can help with things that they didn't have before. We had a lot of battery failures in the past. We've learned a lot of lessons. I think we're still really watching out for some of those things. The other thing too is that some of these technologies, because they've gotten cheaper or a little bit easier to install, now there's a whole bunch of people that are really interested, companies that are really interested in becoming independent power producers for us. And we're getting that cost at a cheaper and cheaper cost, and we're keeping out an eye for those options that are the right mix for the customer, that are hopefully going to lower customer bills, and that we can sell the power cheaper than what we're getting maybe with diesel generation. So we're trying to see if we can have that right mix, balance that out. Again, because cost is really a big issue for customers, and we want to make sure, and our responsibility is to keep that cost down. So we have to watch out for the right technologies and also make sure that it's going to be the right viable thing for the grid.
Yes, that's key. So that balance is it's critical. We are the local electric company. You're a local electric company. It is solely our responsibility, our Kuleana, to make sure that power is there when you need it 24/7. And I guess the challenge is balancing that with adding more clean energy, renewable energy, or as available energy, and keeping that cost as low as we possibly can. Because we know that that's a huge concern for our customers. So one of the projects that we're demonstrating currently is a new substation in Kahului. It is the Kuihelani substation. And we're going to come back and talk a little more with you folks on our planning efforts. But right now, we're going to actually take a visit to the Kuihelani substation. And we kind of want to show you a little bit of what this balance looks like when it comes to upgrading our equipment. In this case, putting in new infrastructure that will help us to not only meet our current needs for energy within the Central Maui area, but also allow for flexibility in the future and enable us to bring on more clean energy, renewable energy moving forward.
Hi, my name is Shayna Decker with Maui Electric, and today we're here talking with Emily Smith, the project lead of our Kuihelani substation. Emily, tell us a bit more about what a substation is.
Sure. A substation is a foundational piece of our system here at Maui Electric, and it basically connects our transmission system with a high voltage electricity to our distribution system with low voltage electricity. So we built this substation here because of the development in Central Maui, and it's just centralized in the right location for where we think new customers are coming on. The substation takes a high voltage electricity and steps it down to low voltage electricity. So the high voltage electricity is actually coming from our power stations, and it comes in overhead on the poles, and it comes down onto our dead ends and our bus, which is kind of the main structures that you see in here. And then it comes down into a transformer, which is the main piece of equipment that steps down the voltage. And then it goes into a switchgear, and then it goes underground. It'll go under Kuihelani into the existing distribution circuits that we have out there to feed electricity to all the customers here. The electricity, the voltage that we have on the transmission that we transmit over long distances is a higher voltage. In this case is 69,000 volts. And then by stepping it down, we just lower that voltage down to, in this case, 12,000 volts. So this substation should be online at the end of October if everything goes as planned, which is always a little tricky. But when the ultimate layout is completed, there could be up to 4 transformers in this substation. Also, our permit allows us to bring, if we want or need, batteries, solar panels, or distributed generation. So what we end up bringing in the future is kind of determined by what we need in the future. So,
Right.
but we have the ability to bring any of that stuff.
So that really does help also contribute to our 100% renewable energy efforts with the ability to add on more renewable resources through this substation.
Yep, sure does.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah.
Thanks again. My name's Shayna Decker with Maui Electric, Emily Smith from our engineering team. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Energy.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Energy, where we are talking today about our planning efforts to get our state, move our state, Maui County, to 100% renewable energy by the year 2045. So you just saw an up-close view of a new substation currently under construction. It's our Kuihelani substation, and that substation was planned with the flexibility to not only enable us to meet the current energy needs of our Central Maui customers, but to also be able to, moving forward, be able to integrate and add renewable energy to our grid and do so safely. Like all of our substations and other equipment and infrastructure, our company assets, this substation has security features that are built in to protect our equipment and keep the public safe from the substation's electrical components. So definitely safety is always first and foremost, particularly as it pertains to our infrastructure. So this project is just one facet of planning for Maui County's energy future. And we are talking today with members of our planning team, really helping our company to move forward toward our super ambitious goal of 100% by 2045. So we have Ellen Nashiwa, Greg Kresge, and Jarrett Cantino. So we're going to continue that dialogue. So Greg, we left off talking a little bit about where we are as a county, and that at the end of 2016, we are at about 37% renewable energy, which, by the way, that's, yeah, we're trying to get to 100%. 37% renewable energy is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. We know that as a company, we cannot do it alone. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. We are really just one component. We will need the synergy of energy partners. We will need the synergy of you, all of you, our customers, government, stakeholders. Everyone has a role to play, and we are not going to get it done without working together to do it. So when we talk about planning and working with energy partners, there's actually a process that's followed. And this process is something called the request for proposal. RFP is what we call it, but request for proposal. So Greg, tell us a little bit, explain what this request for proposal is. What is this?
Sure. So a request for proposal is when we're looking for specific energy needs or requirements, we will put out either a request for information, which is how we get some information if we're kind of thinking about something. But we also then will take it a step further and put out a request for proposal, which is come to us with what you would propose in order to meet the requirement. So we have, for example, there's with the PUC right now, there is actually a request to open a docket that has a request for proposal with it, which is we want companies to come and propose a specific type of energy. For example, we would want renewable energy that helps meet our portfolio and our planning and our infrastructure needs going into the future. When that happens, then there's a time frame and there's some very specific requirements, and sometimes there's not a specific requirement. It really depends, especially with renewable energy. It might say something along the lines of, we would like 5 megawatts of renewable energy, and that meets some specific requirements as far as how we dispatch that energy or when it's available or the function that it's going to provide. So that has those specifics in it, but then the exact type of renewable energy might not be defined. So we kind of want to keep some things open sometimes about, are we going to get the best and most available type of technology that's going to meet that specific need at that specific moment. So a request for proposal is just that. It's a request to submit a proposal from an independent power provider to be able to supply us with energy under what is known as a purchase power agreement. So we have IPP, which is independent power provider, and then the PPA that comes after that with the successful bidder is a purchase power agreement, at which point we negotiate and come up with a contract that we buy the power from this independent power provider.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned requests for information.
Okay.
And not long ago, the company requested information, basically, of landowners. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that component, because really, you know, it all has to align. You know, you have the owner of the property or the land. You have the potential developer, right, who would be able to propose the use of a certain type of renewable energy. May not necessarily specified by us, but as long as it meets the need. But this request for information, this land, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was a really important component of the planning process, actually, because the thing is that these are not quick and fast. You know, we have a lot of different things at play. One of them being, for example, if you choose a site to have your renewable energy project, let's say it's wind, you know, wind turbines, you would then have to do an environmental assessment. You would have to make sure you find the property. You'd have to get all the other structures in place before that even really moves towards, you know, maybe even to the point of where we would do full contractual negotiation. The request for information on our part was we wanted to try to get those landowners that would be open to having renewable energy projects on their property identified ahead of time. So then what we could do is then we could release those property owners to potential bidders, and they didn't have to go out and do it on their own. These would already be identified as potential sites for, and they had to meet certain criteria too, right? Because your property, not all property can have projects on them, and different projects take on different types of things. So for example, PV, you know, might be able to be sited on some agricultural land, whereas other types of generation may not be able to do that. So it was part of defining that ahead of time so that we could cut down on the amount of time that it would take to try to get these projects in play.
Yes, and time. It does, like Greg said, it really does take time. It's not a fast process. So, you know, ways such as this, you know, requesting information from landowners who are open, you know, to renewable energy projects on their land, and just getting us past that step, you know, kind of helps to speed up the process a little bit. So, you know, so we receive information on land. We receive proposals from potential developers. The next step is that it ultimately comes down to a decision by the Public Utilities Commission, or Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, who would decide whether or not it would be the right move for us as a company, for you as customers, if it makes sense from the cost standpoint. And then we move forward from there. So once we receive Public Utility Commission approval on a renewable energy project, we can move forward with the contract. And Greg mentioned this, move forward with a contract with a independent power producer, yeah, which is an IPP, lots of acronyms, but that's exactly what that is. And that's where actually Jarrett comes in. So Jarrett is a renewable energy contract manager, and his role, tell us a little bit about that, Jarrett.
So my role is to be kind of like a liaison between the independent power producer and Maui Electric. So the independent power producers are generating facilities that are independently owned and operated, and we will establish these contracts with them to buy power, like renewable energy. So yeah, I work with them once we establish these contracts to try to achieve whatever their milestones are, their targets are, to try to make sure that they can come online when they say and start providing the next wave of renewable energy for our grid.
Yeah, so put this in perspective for folks, the wind farms that are on the island. So we have Kahiava Wind Farm, of which there are 2, yeah, and that wind farm is right above Mo'olaya. And then we have Auahi Wind Farm, which is on the backside on Ulupalako Ranch land, and those projects are not owned by Maui Electric.
Correct. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, those are power partners of ours. Yeah, and we purchase the power from them, and that power is delivered to you. So it works nicely that way. Talk a little bit about these contracts, long-term contracts. Tell us what that looks like. So often they're like 20-year term contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
And tell us a little bit about how they benefit customers, how we get it to a point where they benefit customers. Because ultimately, we've said it before and we're going to say it again, cost is just as important to us. We all live here just like you do. We're your neighbors too. So tell us a little bit about long-term planning and as far as contracting with partners.
Yeah, so as both you and Greg did touch on, we do negotiate these contracts. They typically last, they're typically over 20 years. One of the biggest things that we look at is the cost. We work really hard to make sure that we are actually negotiating a contract with the lowest cost for our customers. We don't want to be buying very expensive energy, which only results in all of our electricity bills going up. So it is a big focus of ours. So in addition to the technology being appropriate for, say, the RFP that they are responding to, we are focusing heavily to make sure that we can actually buy cheap energy and try to bring down our power bills.
Right. And it's pricing that is stable,
Yes.
and
Yep.
pricing that we can plan on. And it's not volatile, so it's not exposed to imported oil, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, we do not have control over what we pay for the cost of imported fossil fuel, and that cost, as you well know, fluctuates. Yeah, so this will get us away from that, adding more clean energy, protecting our environment, and getting some cost stability, right? Which is really, really important in planning. So there are, speaking of power partners, we are working with a partner who will be, or who is, building 2 solar farms on the island. So tell us a little bit about those projects.
Yeah, so this particular independent power producer, this IPP, has 2 pretty large photovoltaic farms, one in Kihei and one in Lahaina. The one in Kihei is back behind the tech park, so unless you were really looking for it, you wouldn't even know it's there. The one in Lahaina is right next to the Lahaina Luna High School. You can see it from there. For me, I think it actually looks pretty good. They're pretty big. They're 2.87 megawatts each, which will be by far the largest that we'll have on Maui to date. And they're about 12,000 panels each, so they do take up quite a lot of space. But they can certainly help us moving toward our goals of 100% renewable energy. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm happy to continue working with them and see how these projects continue to progress.
Yeah, and the great thing about these larger projects, as opposed to rooftop solar, yeah, which is a residential solar installation on a home, yeah. So the great thing about these larger projects is that we can spread the savings across more customers, yes, and that's a really great thing. So, and as far as these new projects, I know there was a little bit of delay. Yeah, in getting this thing done. And as we said earlier, this takes time. A lot of it takes time. Sure, we want to stay on schedule, but we're gonna continue to work with them and get to a point where we can complete these projects. Hopefully, complete these projects and get the savings to our customers. Yeah. Ellen, so let's see. So as I said, the projects are coming on later in the year, right? Anticipated. So about when is that the end of this year, right?
That's projection, right?
Okay, okay. How does that affect our planning efforts? You know, I know that you know, any time there's a shift in scheduling creates some challenges. So tell us a little bit about.
Well, these projects
Yeah.
just are part of the overall broad mix of resources that we're we're planning for to reach 100% renewable energy by 2045. We're already ahead of the state's 2030 benchmark with about 37% renewable energy for Maui and we'll continue to aggressively pursue these renewable energy projects for Maui County.
Okay, so definitely it will be a team effort. Yeah, a team effort. And when I say team, it's everyone. It's the group you have here, the Maui Electric Ohana, as your power producer. It's our energy partners. It's you at home, our residences, our businesses, you know, government, everyone working together to try to get us there. Greg, so share with our viewers if they want to get involved in the process. What does that look like? How does that happen?
Yeah, so there's several ways that people can get involved in these projects. They don't just spring up overnight and then ta-da, they're done. There's a lot of different ways, public process involvements that it can start with the project itself, with them having to do outreach or appear in front of council or be able to get a permit. That there's typically a public process that goes along with that. There's also the opening of dockets, you know, through the PUC. That's a public process as well. And there's, you know, several ways to get involved with that. You know, whether it's testifying to the PUC or providing testimony, written testimony, or things like that. And then in addition, as we get a little bit further down the line, like we mentioned before with these independent power producers, they end up, we have to get that contract agreed to by the Public Utilities Commission. And that also has to go through that process as another public process for people to be able to get involved in. So there's a whole bunch of steps along the way, especially if there's also things like environmental assessments or things like that. Those are public input devices that allow the public to be able to give their opinions and, you know, state some of their potential concerns. And I do know that for us, we've actually, from some lessons learned, we've decided we are going to also require in future contracts, and we've started doing this already, where we are going to make sure that community involvement, it becomes a part of every contract process, which is we want there to be public outreach. We want there to be community involvement. We want there to be an extra avenue for people to be able to have their input, voice their concerns, and we want to hear those so that we don't get down the line where, yeah, this may have passed through all these different processes, but we get something at the end that says, hey, I didn't agree to that, or that doesn't look right, or something along those lines. We want to make sure that the public really has some input in the contracts that we're negotiating on their behalf, basically, for the energy that's provided to everybody. Right. So we're really taking extra effort to do that.
Yeah, and again, your opinion and your thoughts, your concerns, they matter. They really do. So as Greg said, there are several ways that you can provide feedback, you can provide input. We are pretty active in the community. Earlier, Ellen and Greg shared a little bit about the work that we're doing on Molokai, and that's important to us. But at the same time, as Greg said, we think that any energy partner that we work with, that should be just as important. That's critical. Okay, so Ellen, going forward, what can Maui County expect to see when it comes to planning this 100% by 2045?
I think we can see, we can expect to see some solicitation. So the request for proposals that we were talking about earlier to solicit and to acquire renewable energy, offering new customer programs, And maybe there's been some activity to prepare the grid for 100% renewable energy future once these efforts are initiated or approved by the Public Utilities Commission. So we'll see some activity to get to this 100% renewable energy future. And we'll also continue the dialogue with customers about how do we get there, and just getting their input into the plans going forward, and then also updating the plans going forward to account for any changes that might have occurred, either in technology or regulation or legislation, and incorporating all of that into our new plans.
And to definitely take advantage of cost savings, as we move forward, because costs will change, technical acumen will change, new technology. So again, just looping it right back around to how we started the show, where it's just really all a balance. It is literally sometimes a balancing act, but we're in it for the long term, at least till 2045. So Ellen, Greg, Jarrett, thanks so much for joining us and for sharing your knowledge with our viewers. I think it's really, really important to be able to have productive dialogue, that we start with knowledge. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
So as we talk today, how we are meeting the current energy needs of Maui County, and that's changed dramatically over the years, as we've just talked about. So up next, stick around to meet one of our employees who has seen this evolution throughout the years. Here's Getting to Know Miko, featuring Eugene Carvalho, who is one of our system generation operators. And he's actually celebrating his 40th anniversary with Maui Electric, so he is a longtime employee. You'll see that there is lots of lineage within our Maui Electric Ohana.
Hi, my name is Eugene Carvalho. I'm the system generation operator in the dispatch office, and basically what I do is just orchestrate the wind farms and the power plants. So it's a pretty exciting job. I was born in Oahu. I've come from a family of business. My dad was a businessman. He used to have a mason business when we were growing up. Came here when I was in the first grade. Went to Cresta King School and all the way up to St. Anthony. It was a nice, close-knit school. I have my wife Cheryl. We've been married for somewhere like almost 40 years, Also like to play a little bit of music, and I play the guitar and pretty much all our string instruments, and of course I like to sing. One of the biggest changes that I've seen from all these past years is the renewables has a great impact on our system. A lot of people don't realize how the renewable affects our system. Everybody says, oh, it's free energy, Of course the wind is free and the sun is free, but you need tools to harness the winds and the sun. So that's where a lot of the challenges comes in. The thing I enjoy about my job is just being around people. Hi, I'm Eugene Carvalho. Thank you for getting to know me.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Energy. So Greg, one last thing, there is a workshop coming up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have this new tool that is designed for easy online application for our customer self-supply program. We have a program that's actually going to be phasing out. So customer grid supply is going to be phasing out. We're reaching capacity on that program that was established by the PUC. So the next program that is still ongoing, that will still be available to customers, is customer self-supply. We have this new tool called the Customer Interconnection Tool. It's an online tool with an online portal. It's got some really neat features about it. As you go through the process, it's meant to be very transparent and very user-friendly. There's a lot of drop-down menus for like anything from inverter selection to panel selection. And what it's meant to do is that all along the way in through the process of your application. Once your application gets logged in online, the process will save as it goes along. And when you reach certain milestones in the application process, you automatically get email sent to you about where your application is in the process. It's meant to be, again, very transparent to the customer, so that the contractor and the customer both get notifications at the same time, and that everybody's very aware of where it is in the process. So we are holding a workshop on October 17th for customers to learn more about this tool, be able to see it up close, see what it does, and be able to be aware of what it can provide for them, and if they get certain notifications, what that means. Because that's also a chance for them to dialogue with their contractors and also dialogue with us. So more about that workshop will be available on MauiElectric.com. And again, it's October 17th. I think it's going to be slated for around 5:30 in the evening, so people can come after work. And
that's at our office in Kahului, right
Yeah.
here in Maui Electric.
Yep, we're planning to have that at the Maui Electric auditorium, and we're really looking forward to being able to interface with customers about this new tool.
Yeah, just trying to make it a little easier for all of you. So thanks again, folks, for tuning in to Let's Talk Energy with Maui Electric. We do want to hear from you. This show's not just about energy, it's about you. So, if you've got questions, concerns, if you've got idea for a future topic, send them to us at letstalkenergy@mauielectric.com. So today we talked about our continuous efforts to meet our current energy needs, meet our goal of 100% by 2045, and doing so sustainably, reliably, and as cost effectively as possible. We appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Aloha.